In my Nordic Healthcare / Medicare for All video, I referenced potentially doing a video in the future about why the healthcare market fails and why the libertarian argument that society should simply abandon all regulation and fully privatize the healthcare market would fail on a fundamental level. Today, this is that video. I'm going to be talking about the theory of competitive markets and why there's sort of a fundamental disconnect between healthcare and a competitive market. Perfect competition is probably something you might learn about literally in your first day of the first economics course you take. A lot of economists will talk about the pillars of perfect competition, but often many of these things are subcategories of one another. The pillars of perfect competition most cited that I'll be referencing in this video are 1. The products in the market are not differentiable from each other. 2. All actors in the market are price takers. 3. Information is perfect, ubiquitous, and free-flowing. And 4. There's no entry or exit costs for the market. This is essentially a checklist for determining if a market is perfectly competitive and or if it could be perfectly competitive if left to its own devices. But this isn't actually seen in the real world. Even markets we would describe as the most competitive do not see perfect competition for one reason or another. Perfect competition is a theoretical concept in economics, and the competition of a market should be seen more as a spectrum from most competitive to least competitive rather than a binary where markets are viewed as either competitive or not competitive. A total privatization of healthcare would be disastrous, absent any and all government involvement. Let's take this checklist that I gave to you one at a time. Are the products of the healthcare market differentiable? As in, are healthcare products indistinguishable from one another? Well, the answer is no. Healthcare is a constantly evolving science from a product level, the medicines and machines we use, and from a service level, the surgical techniques and best medical practices. People also view medical services as highly differentiable. People will often develop a brand equity of sorts for certain medical products, and people also often prefer a specific doctor to any randomly assigned doctor. Next, are all actors in the healthcare industry price takers? This means that businesses and consumers in the healthcare industry would not have the ability to set prices at a firm level, and or the market is competitive enough, firms cannot individually influence the price that consumers pay. The answer is also no. Healthcare providers have a lot of power to distort and inflate market prices. Some of the reason for this is the lack of mobility in the healthcare market, that because of the insurance market middle person, people are not mobile enough to shop around and are often forced to choose from a subgroup of total healthcare providers they might have access to. Another key reason is the nature of patents in the healthcare system. A patent that is a government monopoly that is approved on a product for a period of time is the exclusive right to sell a product without competition. This means theoretically if a private company discovered a cure for AIDS without government intervention, the company who discovered this cure would be able to charge likely almost anything they wanted for the drugs because of inelastic demand of consumers. People want to live and not die from AIDS. Now, don't get me wrong, patents are good because they encourage private investment in pharmaceuticals, but as stated in my Nordic healthcare video, there's strong argument for heavy subsidization with price controls on newly discovered drugs in order to avoid price gouging like this. Next, is all of the information free-flowing and universal in the healthcare industry? Not at all. Healthcare providers have a huge information advantage to the average consumer, which allows them to distort the costs of their services. The average person often doesn't have the technical knowledge in order to evaluate whether or not they're getting a good deal from their healthcare provider. Things like 1. Is there a generic version of the drug that the doctor just prescribed me? 2. Is there a medical alternative to the more expensive surgical route that was just recommended? And 3. Is there an equally functional medical device that is much cheaper than the one just recommended by the doctor? People often say you should get a second opinion regarding big healthcare decisions, not necessarily because the doctor could be wrong, but also because the incentives for hospitals and healthcare providers to take advantage of this information gap exists, which might allow for healthcare providers to take advantage of their customers and overcharge them, even though cheaper, more functional, or equally functional alternatives might exist. Finally, are there no entry and exit costs for actors in the healthcare industry? No. There are often very high entry costs to the healthcare industry. Of course, the regulatory burden to be a business that officially provides a healthcare service is very high, and this is okay. Often, libertarian arguments might be that we should do away or significantly scale back things like the FDA because it would eliminate this problem, leading to a more competitive market and lower costs, and the truth is they're probably right in this regard. If we were to significantly scale back or abolish the FDA, for example, we would probably see a more competitive market for pharmaceuticals, medical devices, and medical services with corresponding lower prices. But again, because of the information gap in the healthcare industry, we would probably see what we saw before stricter regulations. Snake oil salesmen selling people pills, medical equipment, and medical services that aren't actually rigorously proven to be effective in solving the healthcare problems they claim to. The necessity for these consumer protections means the healthcare market will never be free of at least some entry and exit costs. Now, to be clear, there are probably ways to reform the healthcare regulatory structure in such a way that doesn't necessarily sacrifice quality, but the absolutist position of total privatization is untenable. We will always need a relatively high regulatory standard for businesses who claim to solve healthcare-related problems. Despite all of this, there are other structural issues mostly having to do with insurance as a spurious actor in the healthcare market. Insurance creates two main problems. One is moral hazard, and two is the decentralized nature of cost negotiation. Moral hazard is when someone doesn't necessarily have to mitigate their behavior in order to avoid costs and risks because they are separated from the associated costs and risks. In practice, this might look like someone refusing to engage in preventative care because they can simply rely on health insurance to pay for the necessary surgeries or medicine they might need. The second problem of the decentralized nature of insurance causes a plethora of issues in the competitive nature of the healthcare market. People complain about the administrative costs of the US being significantly high. This mostly comes in the form of salaries for people surrounding the apparatus of insurance billing and compliance, and it also comes in the form of malpractice suits against healthcare providers. Over a third of healthcare-related expenditure in the United States is related to this administrative cost, which is double the proportion of the single-payer system in Canada. The decentralized negotiation process is also less valuable than a more centralized one. A single insurance provider amongst many will not have the same negotiating leverage that a unified entity, i.e. the state, would have in terms of driving down exorbitant costs and extending healthcare benefits to consumers. All of these issues is why I said that the healthcare debate in economic terms is generally which government-regulated system you want and not whether or not you'd want government oversight or involvement in the healthcare market. Keep in mind, these are not all the issues with the healthcare market, just some of the broadest strokes of the theory behind why the market of healthcare fails as an industry. To end, the reason the healthcare market is uncompetitive is not because of government regulation, and it is not because of any independent actor in the healthcare system. It is because of the market structure itself, that there's a diverse range of products that are hard to differentiate for the average person, that actors in the market have price-making ability, that information is not perfect, it's not ubiquitous, and it's not exactly free-flowing, and of course there are high regulatory burdens that are somewhat necessary in the healthcare industry. I'm in favor of single-payer healthcare because of all of these associated structural market problems and because of the demonstrable success of single-payer nations across the world at controlling costs and extending access to quality healthcare to its citizens.